Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Psych Talk. Today we're diving deep into a pressing topic, substance abuse. Why is it an epidemic? Why is it rising? And most importantly, what can we do to understand it better and help those who are struggling with it? We'll explore these from a biopsychosocial perspective, breaking it down into biological, psychological, and social factors. So let's get into it. First of all, why is substance abuse an epidemic? Well, as we know, substance abuse has become a growing epidemic, and while education has led to a slight decline in alcohol consumption, the use of other substances like opioids and synthetic drugs, etc., is on the rise. What is interesting though, alcohol companies are noticing that people are consuming and buying less alcoholic beverages, and so what they're doing is producing more non-alcoholic beverages to adapt to this new shift toward moderation. And why is this happening? Well, let's face it, people don't just use substances for fun. Many people start to use drugs as a coping mechanism to not feel pain anymore, anxiety, or hopelessness. Obviously, others might be chasing pleasure only to find themselves stuck in a cycle of dependence. And the problem is that when the substances are taken away, there's often a void that is left behind. And, it's just hard to get out of the cycle. The question is, how do we fill that void? What is the key to not only stop feeling pain, anxiety, and hopelessness, but also to not relapse? What is the key to that? How do we cope with this void that we have inside? Well, I'll get into that in just a second, but first I want to explain to you guys why it's important for people who are trying to quit a substance to first understand what is going on in their brain and what is going on with their nervous system. And so psychoeducation is very important, and it's one of the first steps to actually recover. And so obviously therapy plays a huge role in recovery. And when clients learn what's happening in their nervous system, it helps them understand their behavior better. And so, for example, substance use affects the brain's reward system, giving that temporary rush of feel-good chemicals. And over time, these chemicals deplete, creating a void that substances temporarily fill. And by explaining this process, we remove shame and help people feel empowered. And they realize, this is not just about willpower, it's about our biology, psychology, and social factors working together. And so understanding their struggle takes away stigma and makes recovery more achievable. And what is the role of relationships and community? So at its core, substance abuse often stems from disconnection. That is the key, quite literally, the key to fill this void is actually connection. And so substance abuse often stems from disconnection, from ourselves, from others, and from our communities. Humans are social creatures, and thousands of years ago, our survival depended on being part of a group. And being isolated meant certain death. And even today, while we no longer need others to physically survive, we psychologically need connection. And unfortunately, modern life, with its focus on technology and individualism, has made it very hard for us, right? And also it's very easy for us to physically survive while being disconnected to others. Whereas in the past, we could not survive physically if we didn't have a community or a group. Whereas nowadays, we can literally just be home 24/7, work from home, order groceries from home, food and everything, and not get out of our houses, get paid, we don't have to get paid, we don't have to get out of our house. We literally can do everything online. And so, yeah, this is a problem. And what is the result? Well, epidemics of loneliness and addiction and obesity too. And so many people turn to substances as a substitute for meaningful human connection. That is literally why many people get into substance abuse. They have this void inside themselves, this pain, and they don't know what is going on. They don't know why they feel this way, and they just want to feel good, and they want to feel those chemicals, those rush or feel good chemicals. And we feel those rush or feel good chemicals when we actually connect with others, when we feel safe, when we have a community. And so we don't need the drug if we have that in our lives. And so how recovery looks like is basically rebuilding relationships and finding a sense of belonging. That's why programs like AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, work in a way that they provide a supportive community for people who may not have close relationships in their lives. So now, let's look at this from a biopsychosocial perspective. So to understand substance abuse fully, we need to look at it through three lenses: biological, psychological, and social. So, biological. Well, genetics play a role. For example, Native Americans are more prone to alcoholism because of genetic vulnerabilities. And we also inherit habits from our ancestors, like what we eat or how our bodies respond to substances. For example, certain people are more tolerant to spicy food and some others are not. 2, psychological. Well, trauma is often at the root of substance abuse. And so almost everyone has experienced some level of trauma, but how we process it varies. So 2 siblings can grow up in the same environment, but one might turn to alcohol while the other becomes a high achiever. Why? Well, it's about perspective, whether they see themselves as survivors or victims, and their internal resources. And then we have social. Connection and community are critical. Do people feel safe? Do they have relationships that meet their emotional needs? In cultures like France also, where wine is part of, a family meal, substance use is more integrated into social settings and less about escapism. So now let's talk about addiction in a modern world. Here's the big question. Why do we see so much addiction today? It comes down to a mismatch between our physiology and modern life. Humans evolved to thrive on connection and shared experiences. We are quite literally wired to feel a rush of happy chemicals when we have meaningful interactions. But today, technology has replaced much of that connection. So we're lonelier and more isolated than ever, especially among young people. And substances became a way to fill the void. They offer the rush of chemicals we lack from human interaction. But as tolerance builds, people need more and more of the substance to get the same effect. And this creates a destructive cycle of artificial highs and deep lows. And so, how does recovery look like? Well, recovery it's about filling the void. So it's not just about stopping the substance use. It's about filling the void it leaves behind. So this requires looking at both internal and external resources. So what are internal resources? Well, developing skills like self-soothing, emotional regulation, and resilience. So learning to ask yourself, am I seeking pleasure to avoid pain? And then we have to look at external resources. So finding support in relationships, community, and programs like AA, And for those without close connections, groups like these can become a lifeline. And so it's also important to understand why the substance use began in the first place. Was it to cope with pain, to feel better temporarily? And recovery involves replacing unhealthy coping mechanisms with healthy ones and addressing the root cause of the pain. And now, to tie it all together, let's look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, this is very important to know because it literally describes what we need in order to conduct a meaningful, fulfilling life and also being able to function. Okay, so what are the basic needs? The basic needs are food, water, and shelter. So these are the first needs that we need. The second ones are emotional needs. We need safety and security. The third one are psychological needs, which are love and belonging. The fourth one are esteem needs, so feeling valued and capable. The fifth is self-actualization, which is becoming the best version of yourself. And the sixth is transcendence, so connecting to something greater, like a higher power. And so obviously you can see that without the basic needs, we can't have our emotional needs met. And without our emotional needs being met, we cannot have the psychological needs met. And so we have to have all of these ones in place to finally arrive to the fifth, which is becoming the best version of yourself. And six, the transcendence, which is connecting to something greater. And addiction often begins when one or more of these needs are not met. For example, if someone feels unloved or undervalued, substances might temporarily fill that gap. And so recovery is about addressing these unmet needs and helping individuals build fulfilling and connected lives. So ultimately, the quality of our lives depends on the quality of our relationships. So our relationships with ourselves, with others, and with our communities. And by addressing the biopsychosocial factors of addiction, we can begin to heal the epidemic and create a world where connection replaces isolation. So basically, the feelings that drugs give you in the moment can be replaced with social connections. Literally, you can start building connections slowly. You can find there are many communities out there that are always welcoming and are always looking for people. And if we can put ourselves in those positions where we can have more social connections and more deep, meaningful relationships with others, we actually do not need drugs because we will have those happy chemicals already in our system, and we will not feel that void that causes people to actually look for the drug. Okay, this is the end of the episode. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed it.